Good night, Belizeans at home and abroad. This is the Belizean Affairs Show number 309. 309. My name is Leonard Brackett. Today, being Friday, I will be the chairman of the program, and we will be discussing some constitutional matters as regards to the Constitution of Belize and the revamping there or evisceration thereof. Uh, I'll follow the format for our program as we normally do, which is to say a short prayer, after which I'll do a short reading. So I'll just go ahead and bow my head for right now and say a short prayer. Divine loving Father, we thank you for this privilege to come before thy presence once more. Thou who art the creator of heaven and earth and all that in them are, thou who art our creator as well, thou knowest our hearts, our desires, even our most secret thoughts, loving Father. We pray that thou mayest bless our family members, friends, and loved ones wherever they are. Please continue to abide with the people of our country of Belize, the people and its leadership, as well as the country. Please be merciful unto them all. Please abide with this country of the United States as well. Please bless the leaders and people and country. And please be merciful unto those people who are in harm's way, in tornadoes, volcanoes, earthquakes, uh, hurricanes, and whatever else not is going on in the world, loving Father. Please be merciful unto the rest of us, for we ask these mercies in Jesus' name. Amen. Thank you very much for allowing me to indulge in that aspect of our program. I'll do a short reading right now. I don't see any of our other panelists in the background yet. Uh, so I'll just, in the interest of timeliness, I'll just keep moving along with the program. Job. I'll read from the book of Job, and I'll read from chapter 9, starting at verse 1. Then Job answered and said, I know it is so of a truth, but how should man be just with God? As a question. If he will contend with him, he cannot answer him. One of the thousand, one of a thousand. He is wise in heart and mighty in strength, who hath hardened himself against him, being God, and hath prospered. Thank you very much for allowing us to indulge in that aspect of our programming, as I said, and I'll just move along. And the program for tonight, I'm supposed to be launching it on the other, but I just want to make sure I find the precise item that I'm wanting to deal with. Sorry. I'll just take a little sip of juice just to wet my tongue. Turn on some extra lighting. Okay. So those of you who have listened to our program on a regular basis, either when it's live, as in the case of tonight, or thereafter when the program is finished and we have it on the various platforms and you go there and download it or maybe just read it, you would know that for a while now we have had in our country a bogus process that was set in motion with an ulterior motive of which the people did not make a request to the government to undertake in their name. But for whatever the reasons that the government had, they decided to make an undertaking in the name of the people without the people's consent. And that undertaking was to go and do wholesale excising and or reviewing and revamping and or eviscerate major portions of our constitution. The present constitution as, okay, everyone knows that in a country at any given time, as in our country in Belize, there's only one constitution at a time. So therefore, whichever constitution is prevailing, that's the authority and the law of the land. That is to say, if someone wants to do something that is outside of the boundaries of our current constitution, they're acting unlawful, unconstitutional, and they're basically acting as scofflaws. Now, that could be a civilian, it could be a government official, it could be a minister or whatever. The bottom line is that all of us are equal under the law according to Section 6 of our Constitution. And it is clearly stipulated in the Constitution as well that if the government wishes to deal with any matter that relates to Section 3 all the way through Section 19 of our Constitution, and inclusive Section 20 for judicial review, and Section 95 for the empowerment of the Supreme Court or the high court in our in the country. Not the highest, by the way, because we have above the Supreme Court, we also have what they call the appellate court. And above the appellate court, we have what you call the regional jurisdictional court, which is the Caribbean Court of Justice. We no more subscribe to the Privy Council as we used to do before. But that being said, as part of an act that was instituted by the House of Representatives, they call it a PCC Act, which after the Congress passed it, that legitimized them to be able to get money out of the consolidated fund to sponsor that endeavor. That is the endeavor to haul and pull the Constitution, to create, in their mind, a more pliable Constitution to their wishes. And in so doing, their attempts was, as I kept on saying over and over for many months now, their attempt was to bastardize the present Constitution and hopefully be able to commit sedition, overthrow the existing system, and bring about a new system. What ended up happening is this commission that was put in place under the PCC had a previous name before they constituted it under the name of the PCC, the People's Constitution Commission. It was previously named the Constitution Reform Commission. Nevertheless, that this commission now had to do a report and submit to the Prime Minister for his review and the cabinet, for them to decide what part of it, if any of it, would be taken to the House of Representatives for legislative purposes. Now, before they go and create a legislation in that regards to alter the Constitution, whatever is it that they wanted to alter should have been brought to the public by via of what you call a plebiscite, as a referendum, because that is what's mandated in the Constitution of Belize. In case the government wanted to deal with any of these fundamental rights which are enshrined in the Constitution, they first have to get the acquiescence of the public. Somehow, someone, as a smart elite, decided that, okay, well, they're going to go around and consult the public, that is to say, speak to some people at various meetings, not too many meetings, by the way, and by doing that, they consider that to be a consultation with the public. I'm not too sure if adequate advice or legal advice or constitutional advice was sought and or was given to the proponents of that idea. But at the end of the day, it appears that that was not the case. That is, that they never got proper, sound, legal, constitutional advice. Because when the Constitution speaks about consultation with the public, a plebiscite to get the input and acquiescence of the public, it means a referendum, which is why we have a referendum law in the country under the Representation of the People's Act. It's mandated. There shall be a referendum when dealing with any of these particular matters. But because the legislator is empowered to make laws, and not just about any law anyhow, they have to make laws within the bounds of the Constitution. Anything outside of the bounds of the Constitution itself declares it as null and void. So I would like to read that particular portion of the Constitution just to make sure that what I'm saying is clearly understood. And for those who accept the premise that the Constitution is the supreme law of our land and believe in it and give it credence and credibility, then they won't have to depend on just listen to my words and take my words for granted, or take my words for what it's supposed to be. That is, I'm just reading the Constitution when I make reference to the constitutional prescripts. So just let me go ahead and read it as is in the Constitution currently, the present Constitution that we have. Remember, I mentioned these people are trying to operate our country as if the constitutional review has already occurred and they are under the new laws now, which is not the case. I'm going to go ahead and read section part 1, section 2, subsection 1 of the Constitution of Belize, and it says as follows: this Constitution is the supreme law of Belize, and if any other law, remember those two words, other law, because we're going to come back to them for clarification and additional, if any other law is inconsistent with this Constitution, that other law shall, to the extent of its inconsistency, be void. What it says, those other laws that are not consistent with the Constitution, to the extent of the inconsistencies, they shall be what? Not could be or will, or, it says shall be void. That is, they shall be deemed to be void. So long as you make a law in the House of Representatives, and that law is violative of the existing Constitution, that law that is violative is null and void, basically. You could make a million different laws. Whichever of those million laws that you make is violative of the Constitution, they do not have the constitutional power of legal or legality or constitutionality to back it up, regardless of whether 100% of the legislators put that law together. That is that other law, as it is stipulated here in the Constitution, as I just read, to the extent of its inconsistencies to the Constitution of Belize, is void. But they keep making these bastardized laws to bastardize the existing Constitution. And they keep acting or behaving as if they have no regards or respect or consideration for the existing Constitution, which tells them what is lawful, what is constitutional or not. They keep giving the people the impression that because they're empowered to make laws, that all the laws that they make must be accepted as being lawful, when they are actually acting as a cabal of lawbreakers. They're supposed to be lawmakers, but what they do is they break the law. They snub the law, the highest law of the land, the supreme law of the land, the constitution of the land. They pretend it doesn't exist. And only what comes out of their head at any given time becomes the law of the land or the law of the day. People like those you call scarf law. They are scarf law. They violate the law wittingly and unwittingly. But in most cases, when they go and make a bastardized law that does not comport with the prescriptions and requirements of the Constitution, and they go ahead and do it anyway, just because they can do it and nobody can stop them, they ought to be sent to jail for violating the law just like any other common criminal. Bottom line. I'll read again exactly what it says, right? Part 1 of the Constitution of Belize, the existing Constitution, Section 2, subsection 1 reads as follows. This Constitution is the supreme law of Belize, and if any other law is inconsistent with this Constitution, that other law, such as bogus acts, unconstitutional acts, or statutory instruments, or process procedures or protocols, none of these items trump the Constitution, because the Constitution is the supreme law of the land. So don't care whatever minister gets up and makes a law or makes an edict or a decree or a statutory instrument. As a matter of fact, like I said before, even if all members of Congress decide to make a bastardized law, it is still a bastardized law. If it's unconstitutional, it's unconstitutional. But the trick is that they go ahead and make these bastardized laws, and people suffer the consequences of these laws that they make. And unless these matters are taken to the court for the court to pronounce that the law was inconsistent with the Constitution and therefore it was violative of the Constitution and of the rights of the people, I'm sorry, I have one of my guests in the background, and I was going on and not paying proper attention. Or was it? Oh, that's Gregory. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Greg. Just saw you in the background. I thought it was probably Mr. Morrison or Mr. Wade. No, because I was just running on with my program.
Good night, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome, sir. Could go ahead and identify yourself and give a preface now before I continue.
Good good night to the people at home and abroad. Thanking you for tuning in to this our 309th episode of Belizean Affairs.
Thank you very much, Greg. I'll proceed. Um, as I said, what I was reading just now is part one, section two, subsection one of the Constitution of Belize. And I'm going to repeat for emphasis again. This Constitution, meaning the Constitution of Belize, is the supreme law of Belize. And if any other law, which is made by the legislator or anyone, or any other statutory instruments, which are called SIs, or any other department procedures or protocols or whatever, including the police department procedures and any other government department procedures, they're all subject to fall within the bounds of the Constitution. And if any of them, like it says here, any other law is inconsistent with the Constitution, that other law shall, not may, or could, or would, or whatever, shall, is a mandamus. To the extent of the inconsistencies, comma, be void. So whenever the legislator goes to the House and make any law, and they read them, sometimes three readings in one day to try and hurry so that nobody gets to object or come up with no kind of reasons to stop them, what they're doing is acting as scofflaws. There's another part here which I think I should go ahead and mention, and that is section 2, subsection 2, which was included in there by the former Prime Minister, Mr. Barrow, as a way of trying to grab power. Okay? He went on to modify this particular section, subsection 2, and it currently reads, I don't like to read it because it's not supposed to be there. The Supreme Court had ruled, as well as the appellate court had ruled, and the CCJ, the Caribbean Court of Justice, had also upheld the fact that this particular piece of the Constitution should have been excised or taken out of the Constitution because it was put in there as a violative part of the Constitution. It does not belong. It does not comport with the Constitution. It's an other law. It was made and inserted there with devious intent. Let me read it, please. The words other law occurring in subsection 1 above of this section do not include a law to alter any of the provisions of this Constitution, which is passed by the National Assembly in conformity with section 69 of this Constitution. That was for them to say whatever law that they made should trump the Constitution if they so desire. That they would not then have to follow the practices, procedures, and protocols that are normally required to alter the Constitution, because this particular portion, along with section 69.9, would have empowered them to have what they call a supreme legislature. So we have a super executive, a supreme legislator, and a new third judiciary, right? Because now what they're trying to do is take away the powers from the judiciary and put it in the hands of what they call a constitution committee. And when any matter of constitutional question comes up in the future, they're hoping that the 5 people that the prime minister picks and put on that particular committee will be the ones to answer to the prime minister, to the court, and to the country as regards to whether or not, if somebody takes a matter to the court for judicial review, that the court will not be able to entertain it or pronounce on it, because whatever laws the legislator makes, the court would have no power to decide it's unconstitutional or not, because to pronounce as unconstitutional will be left in the hands of the new commission. So they're neutering the judiciary, and they're taking away the powers from the judiciary, and that's a violation of the separation of powers. But we'll deal with that further on. I just wanted us to do that particular portion first, and then go to the particular item that I was trying to address. Greg, just for let me see, for house cleaning purposes, I just want to I know I'm live still, right? But I just want to, before I get deeper into what I'm saying, I just wanted to cue you up quickly that I was dealing. Oh shucks! Oh, it disappeared. Okay, I gotta go and find it again. Yes, I'll find it. Yeah, I'm dealing with the issue that the Association of Lawyers had put out. They had put out their they put out a statement addressing some of the matters in the report to the prime minister, and they were disagreeing with some of those, as we had been doing before as well. So I just want to go to that. Okay, so it's kind of lengthy, but I'll read some of it. It says the association. Okay, let me give the people that did the work their credits. Okay, part of the press believes was the group that reported this matter. Okay, from which I'm reading right now. It says the Association of Defense Attorneys, ADA in bracket bracket of Belize, has issued a scathing critique. Uh, Greg, there's something in the background. Could you lower it a little bit at least? You don't have to take it up altogether. You could just thank you. Yeah. Um, the Association of Defense Attorneys, ADA of Belize, has issued a scathing critique of the proposed 13th Amendment to the Belize Constitution, warning that it poses serious risk to civil liberties, judicial independence, and the rule of law. In a formal submission dated June 18th, the ADA acknowledged the government's legitimate concerns over national security and public order, but described key portions of the bill as overbroad, ambiguous, and potentially inconsistent with the entrenched constitutional rights, which is what I was alluding to earlier. I'll just stop at that for right now. It's kind of lengthy. I'll go back to it, but I just want to give Greg a chance to preface or stipulate some comments, as far as the first portion that I read. I'll yield to you, Greg, if you don't mind. Greg?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome, sir.
I'm well aware of what is happening within the community, the lawyers, the unions, but I want to say this. It has been quite a while since we here in Belizean affair has been beaten about the bastardization of our constitution. And we can just see now that people are finally waking up and realizing that what we were seeing here nights after nights is happening right before our eyes.
Hmm.
Likewise, I have said before in regards to the PCC Act, if the government of Belize wanted to do justice and equality and credibility for the people of Belize, they should have gone to the learned men and women who knows law and constitutional law and have them get together to rewrite and help with the constitution. I can tell you that I believe the government do not want to do that because they have specific reason,
Ulterior motives.
and that is why they are coming to the people with that scenario. I will go back to you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir. Thank you. I'll just proceed then, because that is just two paragraphs of the release that was sent out, right? So I'll just go ahead and read another portion of it. At the heart of the ADA's objections is the proposed Section 18A, which grants security forces uh, sweeping powers to arrest, search, and seize property in so-called special areas without a warrant, based only on reasonable suspicion. The ADA wants the the ADA warns this dilution or this dilutes procedural safeguards and opens opens the door to abuse of executive power, calling for strong judicial oversight. But as I stipulated earlier, they don't want to have the judiciary perform its present functions. So if they don't want it to perform its present functions, how are they going to be able to be any more effective in their performance as regards to safeguarding the rights of the people as a check and balance against runaway um, um, scofflaw government, who makes laws and proceeds to violate the laws. In other words, you can't make laws and only some people that you as a government wants to classify or criminalize suffer the consequences of those laws. Those of you who form part of the government are also under the same laws and should suffer the same consequences. You break the law, you go to jail, or at least you get tried. Uh, I'll read one more section of it and then I'll go back to you, Greg, for because I know. Okay, I just want to check and see. Yeah, like I said, it's about 8, 9 section, and okay, so um, the the proposed power the proposed power creates scape scope for abuse. The ADA wrote, citing legal precedents from the Privy Council, which we are not under anymore, as I previously discussed in my uh, preview, that that emphasize the need for due process. Even though we are not under Privy Council anymore, we are under the CCJ, there's still the requirements under our constitution and under the type of um, parliamentary constitutional governance that we have for the rule of law to prevail. So the government cannot be making laws and policies of state with the power of state, which belongs to the people, and then turn around and victimize the people with those same policies and powers. I'll yield back to you for a minute, Greg, if you don't mind. Greg,
Yes, Mr.
I
Chairman.
yield back to you again, sir, for another minute or so.
Again, it has to do with executive power over the state. The state is not working in separation of powers. And whenever we have that, we see what happens, how a country is run, with lawlessness coming from the authorities. Until Belize can get its separation of powers act together, I don't expect to find any better coming from our government. I go back to you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. They also went on to say the attorneys also took aim at Section 18B as well, which retroactively validates actions taken under prior emergency proclamations. That is that not only did they carried out those bastardized SOEs that we told them were inconsistent with the Constitution and they were wrong, they were violative of the Constitution and violative of the fundamental rights of the individuals. They pursued policies that they knew were incorrect. But they did so because nobody brought them to account or held them to account, or nobody sued them or had the opportunity to have enough funds to take their case all the way up the chain of the judiciary in order to prevail and force the government hand. Now that we have some cases that they have lost, they're getting scared under the collar, and they are now trying to pretend that, okay, well, all they can do now is to go and alter the Constitution to make what they had done wrong be now legal and be right or be acceptable. But for them to continue with the same bastardized process and behavior, to act as scofflaws, to commit crimes under the color of law against unarmed civilians at that. And because they lost a few cases, now they want to go around and change the Constitution retroactively again, which is another violation of any fundamental process. It is impermissible for any government to make any law retroactive to cover something that had been done in the past under a different law. If the law says that you committed a crime, you need to be tried and dealt with and suffer the consequences of that crime. I wish that the government officials who make this bastardized law that end up hurting civilians, that these lawmakers could be held personally accountable for the outcome of their bastardization of the Constitution, because they should not be able to sit behind the treasury of the country, the laws of the country, and do all of these kind of wicked stuff. I'll just go ahead and read another part of the. Further concerns were raised over the proposed creation of auxiliary security forces. No, I don't see or know why they would want to do that, because we have police force which has the authority vested in it already to arrest and put under remand any offender of the law, from the prime minister all the way down to the poorest man on the street. And then we have a BDF, which is supposed to be guarding our borders, land borders, which are now being used inside of the cities in certain particular areas where the black people live, to suppress and oppress them, instead of being on the border, taking care of the borderline and doing their security jobs. They are now being housed in the towns and villages and cities to terrorize the community. Then we also have a Coast Guard. There are people complaining about the Coast Guard. They're having problems with doing what they need to do or want to do there on the seas. Of course, they can't do everything that they want because there are laws. But you got people going out to the sea to go fishing to make a living and never come back. You have the air wing, right? They have a few planes, and they have a few helicopters or whatever it's not. And at the end of the day, if there's a need, if there's a true emergency where there's a war going on from a neighboring country trying to invade us, or from people inside the country, as local people who want to take up arms against their government or whatever, the police force can be augmented with the help of these other security forces. But now they are proposing to make another independent system here of some kind of police authority or some kind of military authority to support whatever is it that they're doing. The present military that we have, like I said, is being used in the cities and towns and villages to harass people. Sometimes when there is no need. There's no need for these bogus SOEs. There's no need for one of the police officers the other day, not police officer, one of the BDF guys, then when they had the COVID problem and they had to have on a mask. Because this one gentleman went in the store without his mask, the officer took and shot him point blank and turned around and said, "And who's next?" I mean, the audacity, the idea that people can just recklessly behave in that kind of manner because they are wearing a security service uniform. And the worst part, the most egregious part of that particular incident is that very little came out of the situation as regards to consequences to the offending person. Oh, okay, the other guy is dead, so what? Don't worry about him. Everybody else move on with their lives. I just want to finish this with one particular paragraph here, and then I'll come back to you again, Greg, for whatever elucidation you have. I don't see any other individuals yet. Okay, so it said they want to create an auxiliary security force and a new gun and gun court, which the ADA claims lack sufficient safeguards around training and independence and due process. We have the Supreme Court, we have the magistrate courts, and we have tribunals that they can put together for specific purposes. The authority is there. They want to go and create a complete different system independent of the present system so that they can use that new system and empower them with new authority to bastardize the very constitution that all of us are supposed to be living under. And the law says, the supreme law of the land says, according to section 2, subsection 1 that we just read, that any other law that they go and make to try and create this new system here or additional system here is null and void. It's inconsistent with the present constitution. Uh, Normally, when you create a tribunal, as a matter of fact, it should be the equivalent of somebody who has experience, knowledge, and authority vested in them under the court system. It shouldn't be no independent something, maybe like some little gang group for the prime minister to haul and use when he wants. That kind of nonsense only happens in republics. We are not a republic yet. And I keep on saying yet because it seems that some of the people realize that that's where these guys want to take us, and they are quite in tune with that, apparently. They see too much movies. They don't really deal with realities. Okay? But I'll yield back to you for a minute, Greg. Hello, man. Greg?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome, sir.
I want to excuse for a second. There's a hard downpour of rain as
Go ahead.
we
It's
have,
all right.
so I'll just remove and come back.
Uh, okay, then I'll just proceed to read a little more. Let me see. Okay, so it went on to say that the attorneys from the Association of Defense Attorneys, the attorneys also took aim at Section 18B, which retroactively validates actions taken under prior emergency. That is that they don't want the people to come and sue the government now for what was done wrong to them. They just want to make a new law that allows them. Is that? I see somebody else in the background. I'm supposed to have 2 other people on the show tonight, and I see somebody else in the background there. I'm not sure. Let me just double check. Please spare me a minute. Oh man. Okay. No, I think that's Greg. He's still Okay. Yeah, that's great. Like I said, we're supposed to have 2 other guests and one other guest and one other panelist member, and they have both notified me that they would be running a few minutes late. So I keep on having to stop what I'm doing just to check and make sure they are not in the background sitting and waiting for too long. No? So just please excuse me for the diversion from the straight consistency presentation of the program tonight. So it also said that some they complain about these prior emergency proclamations that were illegally done, and because of the most recent law, because of the most recent judgment passed down, the government is now trying to go and make a law to preempt those people being able to have their cases heard. We told them they were making bastardized SOEs and that the SOEs wasn't correct, but they didn't listen. Now they want to go and make laws retroactively, which is impermissible. It's outrageous. That's not tolerable in a democracy where you have proper judicial temperament and judicial um, behavior or actions. This part of the law that they are contemplating here should be struck down by the courts. But within the same part of the law that they are making, they are trying to make it such that the court have no jurisdiction. And in the Supreme, I mean, in the Constitution, it says that the judiciary has unlimited jurisdiction. Okay, but if we had a proper court, unlike the kind of court that we have right now, of judges who are ruling according to the wishes of the government, and they're not ruling as independent, equally empowered body. I'm sorry, Greg. I'm sorry about that. I saw the background and I never realized it was your thing. No, I thought it may have been the other guest or Mr. Wade, and I just clicked on it, and I didn't want to click off on it because I didn't want to let it go off the show.
It's okay, sir. I was trying
Okay,
to close up.
I'm sorry.
There's a
I heard you. I heard you
downpour.
before. I heard you before, and I
There's a
understood that.
downpour coming from that weather in the back of the
Wow,
Pacific going into Mexico.
uh, that's a big one.
Yeah, it
It's,
is.
it was
It's
stretching from Salvador, Guatemala,
right.
Belize, Honduras, and
Anyway,
part of
Mr.
Mexico.
Anyway, Mr. Chairman, let me get into this program so I can show you and the people at home and abroad how this goes beyond what we are speaking about. Okay? I want to go back to what happened to Mr. Wade and Mr. Enriquez
Uh-huh.
and how they were done in the court. And with all that was said and done, I want to go back to what, from the government side, the young attorney had to say. And I will only play a portion of it, Mr. Chairman, because I want to bring you up to exactly what is happening. Let's hear a portion of what he said.
We presented arguments today that focused on 2 points. The first is that we said the matter was res judicata, meaning there is a previous case, the Parker Smith case, if you recall, from back in 2019, which addressed similar issues and in which 6 of the 7 claimants today were also involved. And so we advanced arguments to say that this is abusive. This matter has already been decided by the court, and in fact a consent order was issued by the court that was agreed to by all the parties and that addressed the very same arguments that are being advanced by the claimants, that is malapportionment. But importantly, I think it's important to note that the cabinet last week, I believe, issued a press release in which they committed to facilitate the process of redistricting. So really this entire case is moot because...
I want to stop it right at where he says the case is moot because I want to show the people at home and abroad what is happening in Belize. You heard him speak about res judicata, trying to establish that a ruling was made on a case when in fact there was no ruling on the underlying merit of the case. No, I want
Bamboozlers.
to I want to come to present to show you the people at home and abroad what is happening in this country. Let's go to the next tape. Mr. Chairman, bear with me because you will see what is happening in this country.
What is res judicata? Imagine you are in a courtroom and a judge has just made a decision on a case. You might think that this decision is final, but have you ever wondered why? This brings us to a legal principle known as res judicata. Res judicata is a Latin term that translates to a matter judged. It refers to a legal doctrine that prevents the same case from being tried again once it has been conclusively decided by a competent court. This principle serves to promote the finality of judgments, ensuring that once a dispute has been resolved, the parties involved cannot relitigate the same issue in the future. The application of
No, Mr. Chairman and people, I want to stop it there. The case with these young men who sued the government, and one of them won his case and the government was ordered to pay, I think it's 300,000. The judge who ruled on that case made a ruling on the merit. That case is res judicata. The only thing the government can do is appeal it, but they have no intention to appeal it because they will lose again.
They have no basis.
There is no basis on the appeal. So what the government decided to do, and I will put a banner at the bottom to show the people, there's a question on it. There is
Uh,
a question on the banner.
could you articulate the banner, because there are people who may not be able to see it, or visual impaired or anything like those. If you articulate, then at least the voice would give them a sense of what is being referred to.
The banner is saying, if you look at it, can the Prime Minister exercise the sovereign powers of the judiciary?
No.
Again,
Separation of powers.
can the Prime Minister exercise the sovereign powers of the judiciary?
No.
Now we know he cannot, but this is the way he's trying to do it.
Exactly.
He does not want to pay the young man, so he wants to go in violation of the court. And he wants to file this 13th Amendment so they don't have to pay these young men. Now, what he is doing is violating the separation of powers when it comes to the judiciary,
Exactly.
where he has no control. Because we are living in a country with a constitution and a parliamentary democracy which deals with the separation of powers. And a prime example is the United States. The Prime Minister is not like the President who can do certain things, like he can go to war, he can do other stuff without Congress, but in some cases he must go to Congress to do that. But the Belizean Prime Minister has no authority, none whatsoever, to overrule a decision of a court.
Exactly. Three equally
to rule the decision of a court that has made a ruling on the underlying merits of the case. And what it says for that, a prime minister cannot exercise the sovereign powers of the judiciary in a system with a separation of powers. The judiciary is meant to be independent of the executive branch, which the prime minister leads. The judiciary role is to interpret and apply the law, and it should not be influenced or controlled by the prime minister or any other political figure. So that is their intention, to use executive power to further their authoritarian rule.
Exactly.
And we, the people, must be mindful, because it's only now that we are seeing that the legal's minds are getting involved.
Long overdue.
And I want to state this for a fact. The Constitution of Belize vests the judicial power of Belize in the court, primarily the Supreme Court, also known as the High Court, and the Court of Appeal. So when I say that, I'm saying this to let you, the people at home and abroad, know that the courts have more power than the Prime Minister, because they are there to interpret the law and to make sure that everything that has to do with Section 13 through 19 of the Constitution is protected under judicial review. Before I continue, I will go back to you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Greg. And that is what the discussion from last week. What is it? Not last week. The last program we had, which was on Wednesday, as well as Monday. Those are the things that we're currently discussing as regards to what the recommendations from the PCC was and how it will affect us Belizeans. If, I hope it doesn't happen, but if that were to happen, that they find a way to bring that into existence without the people being able to say, no, we don't want it. Because that's what's required, that the people be the arbiter and the final decision making of whether or not they want their constitution changed and they want those issues to be added into their constitution. If the people doesn't want it, there's no way that the legislator should take it upon themselves to force it down the throat of the people. They went around and talked to a few thousand people, and we have over 400,000 people. And they will say that these few thousand people that they talked to gave them the mandate to change our constitution under which all of us will be living. That's a bunch of baloney. They're hoodwinking the people. And it is for the people to decide whether or not they are in agreement with these changes. And they need to bring these changes to the people and let the people figure it out for themselves and cast their vote. What the Constitution requires under the Representation of the People Act is for the people to speak by means of their vote, to have a referendum. They shall have a referendum, is what the requirement is. But they're going to run around the country. I don't think they went to more than a dozen and a half areas in terms of meetings that they had. I don't think they had more than a dozen and a half meetings. Definitely not two dozen meetings throughout the whole country, and for 400,000 people, 500,000 people. And in their report, which is conflated, by the way, they don't claim that the people want them to take away the powers from the Governor General and the head of state and give all that power to the Prime Minister as the head of state. In order to get that done, that's committing sedition.
As I said before,
go ahead, Greg.
Mr. Chairman,
go ahead, sir.
If you can recall, on Wednesday, I brought up in a topic about the structure of the Constitution. I know there's a lot of people out there, home and abroad, that don't know that the separation of powers makes up the basic structure of the Constitution.
That's part of it.
And it's the most important part. And these are the parts that the present government is having an issue with, that he can't get by, and that is why he is coming to the people.
But he's bamboozling the people. He's not doing it right, and the people don't know better. And the lawyers and other people who know better are falling in line with what the government is doing because they want to get their few changes off the top of the table as well. You're not.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead. Go ahead.
the structure of the Constitution which protect our fundamental rights.
Mm-hmm.
I want to say this because this is what is happening. If the constitutional features are so fundamental, the constitutional features of our Constitution are so fundamental that without them, Belizean constitutionalism, as we take for granted, would cease to exist. If there were no separation of powers, the police could maybe be permitted to sentence criminals, and if the independence of the judiciary did not exist, the ministers of justice could maybe appoint and remove judicial officers, and if the rule of law was not fundamental, then maybe rule by law could become manifest. And this is what they're after. That is exactly why he's trying to do the 13th Amendment. A police state. They could stop you and they could take away from you and you can't recover because you will not be protected by the court. He is trying to seize power over the Constitution.
Great. Uh, the present situation that we have in our country right now, as it is, the way it's operating, not the way it was intended to operate or the way it might end up being operated, but the present situation that we have in the country right now is such that the government, ministers, and the lawmakers, them, and other high officials in our system are suborning the whole system to the point of pretending that we don't have a constitution or the constitution that we have is not valid or necessary or that they don't have no respect or regards for it. That's the way they are running and operating the country. The judges that they are bringing into the country right now at the High Court, whom they bring in with under contract, are being demanded to comply with the wishes of the government and to rule according to government's expectation, rather than to rule according to the law that they have fidelity as judges to comply with. The judges are finding themselves on the docket, lying about certain cases, speaking about wanting to and needing to ignore the cases that are before them. We had Justice Honduras, who was sitting on a case and discussing that case in the middle of the case with Justice Navy, and then come out then come back to the docket and tell the attorney that what the attorney found out wasn't true, that the attorney was lying, until the attorney produced the evidence to them in his own words to show that he was self-impeaching himself, that he was actually lying while he was sitting on the case about the case and discussing about the case, and asking the other judge if the other judge had not disposed of that case before, and had she not done so by just ignoring the fundamental constitutional principles that were involved in the case. Because he was claiming that the same people came back to him with the same case.
But
That's not how the judiciary is supposed to work.
Right. Mr. Chairman, we could take it even further. Because all he does is run the executive. He have no power. The GG have more power than him. Because somebody could be sentenced for murder and the GG could go ahead without this judiciary or parliament and pardon that person. So he has no power.
But the man, they are recommending that they should dispose of the Governor General's position and give that power to the Prime Minister. And the Prime Minister is supposed to take powers from the judiciary and give it to a commission that he is going to appoint 5 members to. That's the new proposal that these jackals want to make our constitution be.
It's all about the grab for power, as I was saying.
That's it.
When you have a prime minister and they get up, in fact, let me go to the tape and hear what the past commissioner said.
You have two different judgments coming from the high courts. We call them conflicting judgments, and so where you have conflicting views coming from the same level of court, because again, the fact that these courts are on the same level, precedents will not work, and so when we have issues like that, then it has to go to the higher court for the higher court to be able to resolve the issue. So the Prime Minister have made it clear that the matter is going to go to the Court of Appeal. And then we see what the Court of Appeal says. If we do not get satisfaction from there, then it can go all the way to the CCJ, which is our apex court. And whatever decision they would have made then would be binding on the courts below.
I know that was under your tenure, though. Do you believe that anything was wrong in allowing that SOE to happen during that time?
I maintain my position, and I am happy to see that the current commissioner also have the same view, that if you have a situation where police strategies have been unable to diffuse the level of violence that is taking place within the society, the government do have a responsibility to act and do what needs to be done to be able to make the society safer. Unfortunately,
the government...
Wait. The government has no authority or power to commit a crime under the color of law. Okay?
Yes.
The government cannot violate the Constitution while pretending that they are trying to uphold the law.
The government has a responsibility to act, but he has to act within the law that is on the book.
Exactly. Act lawfully. Not illegal, or not to use the power of governance or the authority of governance to put out any kind of bastardized illegal behavior, or to countenance police officers being exculpated for committing crimes against unarmed civilians. They all need to be locked up. Are you back, sir?
Mr. Chairman, similar to what is happening where you at and here, your president wants to get involved in a war that he has no business in. Now we have a prime minister who wants to pass a 13th Amendment to make his own law in violation of the powers of the High Court, who already make a ruling on the merit.
Mm-hmm.
So he don't want to go the steps, like the commissioner said, appeal it, go to the CCJ. He don't want to do that. He wants to use executive powers and say, forget that. I'm going to make this 13th Amendment and I will make it retroactive regardless of anybody says. But he's forgetting one thing. He cannot violate the structure of the Constitution, which is the basic structure that makes up the separation of powers, because that is what protects the people's fundamental right, especially Section 20. The powers of Belize lies in the judiciary, and per the Constitution, that is granted to the Chief Justice, who runs the judiciary, not the Prime Minister.
And the biggest part that I hope we don't miss out is Section 95. If nobody remember anything else that we have spoken about tonight, remember Section 95 of the Constitution of Belize. Go check it out. Unlimited jurisdiction, okay? No Prime Minister or the legislator or nobody else can step into the purviews or the authority of the high court or of the judiciary. And like remember in the case where I think it was the case that went all the way um, to the CCJ. That case, I think it was it the Boeing case or was it the telemedia? I think it was the telemedia case, if I'm not mistaken, where the judge said that under the separation of powers, the legislator cannot wake up one day and decide that they're going to write out of existence the judiciary. And that case was the final decision on that case was present. Because we have mentioned about it quite a few times on this particular show, and now we're seeing it being implemented as per the desires of the Prime Minister. That is to say, they want to write out of existence, for all intents and purposes, the powers and the authority vested by our Constitution into the judiciary as a separate branch of government. They are equally and separate branches of government. But then the Prime Minister, he wants to be an autocrat. Well, not even just an autocrat. He wants to be a dictator, probably more than for a day. And he wants to eviscerate the powers of the Constitution. He wants to haul and pull it and get people to help him commit the sedition that he's trying to commit in order for them to accrue more powers to themselves. For what reasons? To give us better governance? No. Just so that when we decide that, okay, we have had enough of his craziness and we want to impeach him or we want to make sure we, take back with powers or whatever, he has the powers vested in him then to be able to block us off from regaining or independence and regaining our rights or having our rights vindicated. He has already said in no uncertain terms there are parts of the Constitution that's blocking him from giving us the kind of governance that he would like to give us. There's nothing wrong with our current Constitution, and he got elected and swore fidelity to it. Why can't he abide by it?
Because they don't want to. They have tried in many ways to get rid of it. Coming to the people, speaking about repatriation, we need to get away from our slave masters. They have tried every single thing in the book, like somebody in the Middle East who went too far and is now feeling the effect of it. This Prime Minister is trying to violate the fundamental rights of freedom.
Well, I wouldn't say he's trying to, Greg. I would say he's violating it, actually.
And I
The
will
court has
say
already ruled
this,
that they have violated it.
if he go ahead and pass the 13th Amendment and he's taken to the High Court, he will lose again because the Prime Minister has no power to create any law inconsistent with the Constitution, which will be null and void, especially when the powers is in the judiciary and there was a ruling and the underlying merit of the case. He cannot change that outcome by simply doing the 13th Amendment. It don't work like that. And anybody who knows Belize's constitution and constitutional law can tell you that. You cannot do that.
Well, I'll go one step further, and that is that he ought not to do that. He should not be doing that because, as the Constitution says, if it's violative of the Constitution, if it's inconsistent with the Constitution, okay, if all 100% of the legislators they get together and make it, much less 75% of them, it is still unconstitutional. What part of that they don't want to accept? Because they are a rogue cabal. Let me I'll yield back for a second. I'm getting a little hot under the collar right now.
You know what he's doing? He is discriminating as he did with the common assault bill that was passed into law.
Mm-hmm.
He made the laws for certain individuals, including themselves, elected official. Then again, he's doing the same thing with the 13th Amendment, because the law he's making will be vesting in only a certain amount of people. And let's listen to it.
Uncertainty in the law cannot persist uncorrected for such a long period. And so, Madam Speaker, this is why I'm here this morning introducing this bill, this Belize Constitution, the 13th Amendment Bill 2025, because legislative intervention is necessary. This bill has 7 clauses. These proposed amendments to the Belize Constitution to make new provisions include 1. A new Section 18A, empowering the Governor General, on the advice of the National Security Council, to make an order on reasonable grounds and in the interest of public safety, public order, and for the purpose of preventing, detecting, and controlling crime, that a designated area is a special area and limit the rights of citizens within this area for a specific period. So now, there will be a constitutional requirement that before the Governor General acts, this is done on the advice of the multi-sectoral body, which includes the heads of our law enforcement apparatus personnel, the Commissioner of Police, the General from the BDF, and also the Commandant from the BDF, and also the Coast Guard.
I need to stop it right there.
They say, Johnny, the mother sent you to school to learn to read and write, and it look like the man named know for reading much less write.
No, imagine.
Wait, Greg, I was just prefacing that. Give me one shot. I want to take long. This gentleman is not a lawyer, has no interest to learn or understand anything about legality, because he's a scumbag. He's a scoundrel. He's a scofflaw. He doesn't care anything about the Constitution. So now he wants to come and hell and pull the Constitution to create another part of a law that is totally inconsistent with the exact Constitution. They're trying to make an SOE format to be legalized in terms of the legal conduct, and regardless of who all they get to put together for it, it's not going to make it legal. If it's illegal, it's illegal. If it's unconstitutional, it's unconstitutional. If it violates the Constitution, it violates it. If it's inconsistent, it's not consistent. So I don't care if the Governor General signs off on it, which has been happening over and over. The Attorney General is the Governor General's legal representative or lawyer or legal advisor, okay? So anything where the Attorney General gets out of cabinet that the Prime Minister wants him to get the Governor General to sign, they take it and put it under the nose of the Governor General, and she don't know the difference. She does not have another independent constitutional or legal office to advise her adequately. So she's being bamboozled and taken for fool.
But Mr. Chairman, you know what that will do? When he passed that and he wants to use that, he can use that against anybody, because the law will be retroactive and you can't sue them. So if the policeman and you have a scuffle, you're not a gangbanger, he can pick you up under the law and you are gone.
You're classified.
So that is what is happening.
Yeah. And the problem is that the average civilian on the street now have money to fight the government, who has a deep pocket with the treasury available to them.
But what is that telling you? Authoritarian rule heading to republic. You heard who he called? The BDF, the Coast Guard. He is going to use the military powers to back him into republic against the people.
And the same ones them that he's counting on are the ones that are going to crack his neck. Okay? That's how stupid he is. He thinks he's being cute by too many factors. And that's how come revolution starts in countries. And that is how come dictators are disposed of in countries. They then pretend that they have the support of the military behind them, and to hell with the people. And so long as they can support, suborn enough of the military personnel and the police and the officers, them, they run the show. But as soon as somebody get wise enough about what is it that they are doing and how is it that they are managing to do it, then that other person or group wants to try their luck at doing the same thing.
Mr. Chairman, we can go back over the many shows on this platform, and we have been saying this to the public. We have always been a step ahead of the government. We have always proved them wrong. On a scale of 1 to 100, 95 to 97%
It's all
of what
recorded.
we had spoken about have
All
come to
recorded.
pass. So
But
it is nothing new to us. We know what road they are trying to go.
I'll just read a little bit more of this same thing that I was reading before.
Go ahead, sir.
just out of basic courtesy and giving them guys then kudos, because I'm kind of ecstatic that they at least decided to step to the plate, not totally, but at least for whatever little effort that they're spending in terms of trying to get this job done, because it needs to be done. Okay, so I read that one already. Okay, let me read it. The attorneys also took aim at Section 18B, which retroactively validates actions taken under prior emergency proclamations, which were illegal. Now they're trying to legalize it retroactively. Some of which are currently under challenge. The ADA argues this undermines the principle of res judicata, as you had spoken to a little earlier. That is that those cases have not been heard, they have not been adjudicated, and the government is trying to cut those people at the knee so they don't have a chance to come into the court to have their case heard and or dealt with based on the last ruling. I think it was Judge Navy that made that ruling to say that the government was being scofflaws and unconstitutional in their conduct, not as if they didn't know it before.
That's what they are trying to do. The cases that have not been heard, they want to use it as res judicata, like
Right.
you finish,
They want to
which
ignore
is
it, basically.
crazy.
Further concerns were raised over the proposed creation of an auxiliary security force and a new gun and gun court, which the ADA claims lack sufficient safeguards around training and independence and due process. The group outlined a series of recommendations, including limits on emergency powers, which needs to happen, mandatory judicial review, which is mandated under Section 20 and backed up by Section 95, as I stipulated earlier, and the inclusion of explicit human rights protections, which already exist, as we have been saying, from Section 3 of our Constitution all the way to Section 19, inclusive.
That is correct.
So, it's not like anything new. It's just that we need to have these people adhere to the present rule or the present law. So they always talk about rule of law and this and that and a whole lot of nonsense. They're ignoring the laws that we have on the book.
But here we have a prime minister that don't even want to respect the ruling of the High Court. That he wants to make an amendment to bash it.
I'll yield back the last few minutes of the show to you, Greg, for you to wrap it up, close out your thoughts or whatever, in regards to the tonight show.
As I said before, this is something that the populace, the people at home and abroad, must get together and fight against. Because if you don't, this is what will happen.
Government is talentless. They cannot solve the crime problem. Instead, they are codifying the ability to suspend fundamental rights and freedoms guised as prevention and control of crime. You hear that? 2, they openly, through this amendment, through legislation, accept that the state of emergencies that they imposed on Belizean people were unlawful and not consistent with the Constitution. So since the court ruling, then the hurry go change the Constitution. They say the 2 rulings are uncertain. You know what you do when you're unhappy about a decision from the court? You appeal. Go through the process that we have for appeal. They are creating new and lower thresholds for what constitutes a state of emergency. The GG will get wide powers and authority to make rules and regulations on how to prevent crime. It can make rules on the custody or disposal of anything police take away from you. You understand? So existing where you hatch it, if I take away something from you, Mr. Warrior, and I the police, I have to document it, you know. And when I go to station, when I put it in the exhibit room, I have to document it, you know what I call that? Chain of custody. With their new thing, none of that. Then you could just take away your thing, huff your thing, and you get punk. No. That. You know what this bill will also do? Make retroactive the lawfulness of all states of emergencies. So then they try and make it seem like the one when it happened under the previous administration, yeah, we are make that lawful too. But if the thing is unlawful, it is unlawful. But they are saying, and let me tell you is how many? 2 SOEs in 2018, 4 SOEs in 2020, 2 SOEs in 2021, 2 in 2022, 2 in 2023, 4 in 2024, and 2 in 2025 so far. What this bill will do is make all of those lawful, beating the court to the punch after the declaration by the High Court. You know what else it does? It prohibits any new litigant like me and you know, what would have carried in a court, prevent anybody from filing any action against the government of Belize, challenging the lawfulness of the state of emergency from the effective date, May 26, 2025. So if you file your lawsuit before then, yeah, you're getting a blah, you could finish your thing, but anything after that, no, this bill is saying, no dice.
Mr. Greg, quickly.
Go ahead, sir.
I'd like to say that the Senator Pitts, was 100% on target and on mark with her comments and the facts. In addition, the government no care how they handle and pull the process. At this point, even if they try to make it, well, not even they try, they could make it retroactively, but it will not work because no court in their right judicious temperament would accept to rule on any such bastardized constitutional hall and pulling or bastardization, okay? So the bottom line is that they will go ahead and do what they want, as they always have done. The problem is that the people don't have the money to go carry in a court to survive the process, because if they lose at the High Court, they won't want to carry it at the appellate court. People don't have the money. Even if they find the money and then go to the appellate court, because if you don't show up at the appellate court, then win by default. But if you show up, if you have the money, you find the money and you show up, you want to win your case. And when you don't win, they have deeper pockets because they got the government treasury. So they're going way to the Caribbean Court of Justice. The average individual or person don't have money to sponsor that, unless they take the legal and papers and so on and give it to the lawyers and whoever's not, or try to convert it into some cash to make them go spend money to do all the paperwork and everything that needs to be done, and the payment for the fees for the case and everything else. And still after the High Court have decided, like I said earlier, some of the cases, then we'll talk about Boeing case and the telemedia case and others, when the court ruled at the Caribbean Court of Justice, the idiots then turn around and still no follow the law. Like I said earlier when I read the Constitution just now, Section 2, subsection 2, which shouldn't be in the book, but it's on the book, and anybody could read it out of the book there right now as a part of the Constitution and say, well, if it's there, that's what it says, that's what it is. When it should not be. These jackals are playing us fast and loose. But anyhow,
at the end of the day, Mr. Chairman, you cannot use the legislator to trump the ruling of the High Court. Plain and simple. Exactly. With that said,
neither the legislator or the executive, nor even the Supreme Court, even the legislature, even the judiciary, none of those three branches of government can trump our Constitution. Okay?
Right.
If all three of them get together,
right.
they still can't trump the Constitution.
That's what I'm saying. The legislator is to make law, and the powers is in the judiciary and the executive to make sure they are right. But the legislator can't make a law to trump a ruling on the merit that was done by the High Court, who the power is invested in.
That's a bastardization of the Constitution. That's ill will.
Right. With that said, I'd like to say good night to the people at home and abroad. And we thank you for tuning in to this 309th episode of Belizean Affairs. Hoping that you will tune in again on Monday. And we will come back again and speak some more about this 13th Amendment and see what else we can add to it.
One last word of house cleaning. I had promised last Wednesday that tonight's program would have been about a certain specifics. But as time came by, we found the necessity to be able to just piggyback on these gentlemen and ladies, the effort, and to give them some kudos and to speak to what is it that they were commenting on. I think we have somebody in the background there, just Greg. I think, I don't know if I'm sir. Hold on, just let me put a basic courtesy since he's already there.
Mr. Morrison.
Mr. Morrison. Bring him on there now. You have him? Oh, two of we do the same thing. Bring him back on. I left it alone. Okay. At least, the gentleman made the effort to be present. We just, Mr. Morrison.
Yes, good evening.
We were just about ready to sign off the program, so we are beyond our time limit.
I thought we had...
No. Greg, can we take another 5-10 minutes? So just...
We can extend, sir.
Just to hear Mr. Morrison's...
Let me give him a rundown of what we're speaking about. Mr. Morrison, the topic tonight was the 13th Amendment. And what I was saying to the public, the Prime Minister cannot use the legislator to trump a ruling from the High Court who the powers is invested in. In other words, the judge from the High Court had made a ruling on the merit. The case is closed. All the government can do is go through the procedures until they are exhausted to appeal the ruling. But he cannot come using the legislator to amend the Constitution with this 13th Amendment and trying to make it retroactive because of the separation of powers.
Exactly.
I will now go to you, Mr. Morrison.
Before you do that, Mr. Morrison,
yes,
the separation of powers doctrine involves the judiciary to interpret the laws and as the vanguard of the Constitution, as well as the executive to manage the country's affairs, as well as the legislative or legislator to make laws or change or modify laws. And those laws that they make and modify must be sanctioned by the Supreme Court or the High Courts in order for them to be classified as being legal, lawful, and constitutional, rather than violative of the Constitution and or being inconsistent with the Constitution. The legislator can't dictate or determine whether they are, they can't trump the court. In other words, each of them have their own jurisdiction.
In other
You,
words,
doctor.
what we're saying is the Constitution is the law of the land, and the powers of that is invested in the Chief Justice, not the legislator. We go to you, Mr. Morrison.
Yeah, that's an interesting point you made there, Mr. Brackett, Gregory Brackett. Because I keep thinking that somehow we have given over when we have introduced the CCJ as the supreme law of the land. How we make that balance now.
Yes, sir, you're correct. You're 100% correct. There's no, but what we were saying is that okay, quickly, the two-level courts in the three-level courts in Belize, right? The High Court, which used to be the Supreme Court, the Appellate High Court, right? And then we have the Magistrate Court at the lower level.
Yes.
All those courts are part of the judiciary, which includes also the Caribbean Court of Justice. So when we are talking about the High Court and about, all of those are included under that one umbrella.
Yes, no, I understand. Yeah. And
You're
that's
correct. Your observation was correct. That's all I was trying to say.
Yeah. So it kind of always bothers me when we sort of gives up the full authority of who the final interpreter of our Constitution is when we pass that over to the CCJ. Have always been a little bit kind of troubling for me, in that we put in the final analysis the decisions and final functioning of our courts and our system of determining the validity of any constitutional issue in the hands of a Caribbean Court of Justice.
Could I interject quickly? If we don't do that, we will end up with a much worse problem than the one we currently have. That is that, remember, just recently, there was a situation where the Supreme Court, the High Court, we call it now, Justice Honduras, had impeached himself, right? By lying on the docket to the plaintiff that was before him on a particular case, and made certain stipulations that he turned around and said wasn't so, but that was proven to be so when the evidence was presented to the general public, as a matter of fact, and was given to the Chief Justice to deal with, right? The bottom line is that it's easier to suborn a local high court than it is to suborn appellate court, because they are much more seasoned and experienced, and people that are, let me not say it like that. And then also when you go to the final court in CCJ, those are people of what you'd call higher integrity or higher level of jurisprudence and experience, and they're not that easily subornable. I'm not saying that somebody cannot be suborned or somebody wouldn't do a favor on behalf of somebody else, or we're dealing with human beings, right? But to say we would leave at the highest level in our court, as in Belize, as being with local Supreme Court or High Court, that's a travesty against that way with the head for there, That way they're in the head for it, no. Okay, once they succeed in what they're doing, that's where we end up. And that will be a travesty.
Mr. Morrison, yes, I had posted a question, and I will just run the banner so you can see what I had said. Can the Prime Minister exercise the sovereign powers of the judiciary?
Well, that's one of the concern we had, right? How now we're not having that clear. We don't have it in the first place, that independence and separation, because of how our courts are structured for financing, right?
Uh,
And administration.
yes, yes. We have had it, Mr. Morrison, we have had that as the basis of our court system. But as I have been pointing out recently, it seems like we have lost our way because now we are bringing in judges who are suborned under their contract, junior judges. Like, for example, let's say a Judge Conte would not have countenanced the idea of what these other judges are now currently doing, or a Judge Benjamin. People of gravitas, I mean, people who are, these people that we're having right now, they play hanky-panky with the government. So that level of trust and that hopefulness that you'd get vindicated if you go to court, or it's not there anymore. Unfortunately, I'm sorry. We used up a lot of the time, and so we will try to give you a little time. So
no. Well, thank you very much. Yeah,
so the answer to that, Mr. Morrison, was this: a prime minister cannot exercise the sovereign powers of the judiciary in a system with a separation of powers.
Exactly.
Well, the judiciary was meant to be independent.
We
have a parliamentary democracy, and he has no power
or authority. But he still sticks his finger in there. All our past prime ministers have always done that, as a matter of practice.
Well, that's why we're saying we're going to authoritarian rule, because what is happening if we do the 13th Amendment? He's strictly saying, if a judge make a ruling and he don't like it, I'm going to amend the Constitution.
Yep.
And we can make it retroactive to get away. But anyway, go ahead, Mr. Morrison.
Mr. Barrett did that with, I think it was Judge Benjamin, right? When he ruled about the ICJ thing, the referendum stuff.
Yes.
Barrett run to the assembly and call one quick meeting and pass and allow it and stuff. And that way did that section 2.2 and section 69.9 craziness.
Yeah.
So let me hear you on that topic, Mr. Morrison.
Well, I agree, and I do think that those quick shift that the prime minister did previously, Barrow, that Mr. Brackett mentioned, and then what this current prime minister is looking to do
on steroids,
in terms of the 13th Amendment, they're all contravening on what the Constitution ought to do. But and while we with some blatancy say that it can't be done, I think if they do it and we let it stand, it will be done. That's my concern. But it is in contrast to how the spirit and the law of the Constitution is supposed to function. But I'm afraid if these things don't get challenged, and once they start particularly with the weakness of the judges, as we mentioned,
Mr. Wade, not Mr. Wade, Mr. Morrison, I have 100% belief that if the prime minister go ahead and do this and violate the separation of powers,
they need to use
especially the powers invested in the Chief Justice by the Constitution, if he's taken to court, he will lose again, because that was a ruling and the merit is res judicata, final, done. The only way to challenge it is through appeal.
They don't want, Greg, they don't want a final ruling. For them, it would be good if they can stall as it is right now and leave the two separate opposing judgment, and they can conflate and say, well, because they have the two, then they can, they don't want a final ruling that rules against them because they don't want to be put into a box, and that's what they're dodging. So while they're stipulating that they would go to the High Court further to clarify, they don't want the judgment. They don't want the final. The same thing and do with all the previous cases that we recently been dealing with them, with Mr. Wade case, the Parker Smith case.
Let's hear from Mr. Morrison, because you know what? They always tell on themselves.
Yeah, but in the
Didn't we
judge's
show it right here?
in the judge's own mouth, he said, ignore them. Isn't that what you did? That's the question that the Judge Honduras posed to Judge Navy. Didn't you ignore them? As if to say, well, I'm going to do the same thing now too. And as of today, he is actually ignoring because he has not produced the evidence. I mean, the ruling that he said he was going to give within a few days' time. It's weeks and months now that since then.
Go ahead, Mr. Morrison.
Yeah.
You have the floor, sir.
Well, yeah, we keep rolling on the same thing. I don't know what more I could offer on it. It seems that it is set, the actions are contravening to the understanding and spirit of the Constitution. But as I said, I'm afraid, and maybe like Mr. Brackett might be saying, is that if they ignore it, they may continue to practice it with the belief and with the hope that in time they will cite that action that they have used as a point that would make another judge more favorable to them. Say, oh, but in that particular case, they were able to do this particular thing that you're contesting, isn't that so? And then you're lost in the muck of be damned that the Constitution itself is no longer clear and distinguishing in terms of what the rule of law and the interpretation could be on the Constitution.
By then, they would have changed the Constitution into a more pliable document, and then they will keep changing it as often as they need to. Every time they commit a crime or want to be exculpated, they'll go and write something new to back them up. That's what when you're dealing with jackals and hyenas and vultures.
Mr. Chairman, but you see, I play the tape. Who do they want to use to back them up? Before they go to the Governor General, who do they want to go to? The BDF, the Coast Guard. What kind of stupidness is that?
Yeah.
You want to go to these people to ask them if you should do a state of emergency.
The man is planning to have
one.
The Prime Minister is planning to have a commission that will be the Constitutional Commission.
Yeah.
Which all constitutional referral matters will be taken to.
Yeah.
And those members are people that he is going to be appointing.
Yeah.
They're not necessarily judges, because at least the way he describes them.
Yeah.
Right?
No. Why he's doing this? It's kind of very, very difficult to see why any thinking person would want to put our country into this type of predicament of vagueness and not only that, he's not always going to be the prime minister, or it's not always going to be PUP, and it's not always going to be people of goodwill.
Mr. Morrison, I answered that question you asking about 1,000 times. The present government have a super majority. They can amend any part of the Constitution except the structure which makes up our fundamental right.
Yes.
That is protected by the separation of powers.
Yeah.
But this is the issue, and I've said it over and over. They want to get rid of our fundamental rights because they're tired of losing lawsuit. And this is the proof right here. They are tired of losing lawsuits.
I will say one thing that's very germane to the whole of this conversation we have had here tonight. So I'm sorry that you, Ian, on the end part of it, Mr. Morrison.
No, yeah.
But these people that we are talking about as the elected people that we put to govern our affairs and the whole country's affairs, they feel like the amount of money whether they get out of the system that have enabled them to become multimillionaires, that they will be able to retire with their families and live happily ever after. They fail to understand that they're living within the same society. It's not like they're going to transfer their wealth, ill-gained wealth at that, most of it, and their family to some other foreign country, maybe to Guatemala because he look like the Prime Minister. He love Guatemala. Every time I see him, they cross there, right? Drinking and hobnobbing with our mortal enemies and planning how they deliver the goods. But I mean, or maybe the Mexico, or maybe Honduras, Nicaragua, or maybe even the States, or maybe the Cuba, because some of them are very aligned with Cuba, and then they try to see if they could come up with some money from mainland China. But that other part, they cross that bridge that is too long and too far to reach the other side. Because that's when they end up they get themselves in a bigger problems than they really are able to handle.
Mr. Morrison, I want to hear you on this because our Prime Minister is acting like the President of the United States. The President has power to do certain things that he don't have to go to Congress.
Yeah.
And there are certain time Congress hold him in check.
Yeah.
But our Prime Minister is trying to do that, and you can't do that when you have a parliamentary democracy with separation of powers.
Yeah.
So I'm mentioning this to see if you can in any way help this man with what he's trying to do.
Well, I definitely don't want to help us to abort and to sabotage our constitution, Mr. Brackett. So I will offer a little aid in that regard. I do believe that what he's doing, and it bothers the dickens out of me to try and totally understand it, because it is dropping enormous power in the laps of the executive or prime minister of the country, or the cabinet, whoever those individuals or power sources are. And that makes it totally political in all these areas, rather than having a third branch, the separation part, to mediate and to navigate and to ensure a level of justice for the opposition, whoever the opposition is, whoever is there as the people, right?
That is correct, sir.
I'm concerned and troubled by why they're doing this, unless they're planning to take us in a path where it is pew pew forever, and then that's the law of the land.
According to them, UDP is dead and gone as the only mass party, and there's no other, but nothing else behind them. So they expect to live like how Cuba lived, right?
So
Castro until he died.
Yeah.
So you don't want to see over the horizon La República de Belize. But in honesty, Mr. Morrison, first of all, the 13th Amendment already have flaws.
Yes.
You cannot pass an amendment that will stop anyone from seek judicial review.
Yeah.
So that's one of the first flaws.
Yeah. Well, but I mean, we all understand this, but we have to remember with all certainty and with all grace. It's not the prime minister that's writing these laws, you know. He has lawyers. He has an attorney general that's looking at this. They're trained people, and so there's something going on, right? Somebody's giving him these points and these things.
Mr. Morrison, can I interrupt you for a second? Christopher Columbus never used to write his own minutes of his travels. He had something Vespucci. I forget the gentleman. He had a gentleman by the name of Americus Vespucci, which is where the name America came from.
Mm-hmm.
He was his chronologist. Okay, so these guys, they write what the bosses want them to write. They put it together.
I don't think the prime minister. No, I don't think the prime minister has the sophistication to be doing this.
Okay.
And even if he does, there are these legal trained minds that should say this is not possible for this. So I mean, it would be interesting to know how these things are.
Facilitators.
Well,
whatever the boss want, the boss get.
Yeah.
Otherwise, they get fired.
Well. I'm hard pressed to see lawyers allowing themselves to be subjugated to those type of stuff. I think there I think there's a mix and there's a lot going on with how these things are introduced and how they are proposed. But
Yes,
what
but
I'm saying,
to what
it,
then?
it
To
is
what then do
going
you
to.
attribute, Mr. Morrison? To what then would you attribute these bastardized SOEs, SIs, and other laws?
But it's not the prime
It is
minister
just
that's
crazy.
coming up with it. It is somebody. It is we see a lot of things going on, but I don't think it's the prime minister that's saying, let's put in an SOE and this is how I want to do it. He may say
It
what
has to come through cabinet, sir.
he may say, what
It
can
has
we
to come
do?
through cabinet,
I
and
can
nothing
say
comes to
this from
cabinet
my
without his
belief.
permission.
I can say this from my belief, right? It's not the GG.
No.
It's the deputy. It's the deputy governor general
Yeah.
who
No,
signatures on most of them.
yeah. Well, they
Who is
have
the
to sign
secretary of
everything
cabinet?
off, right? Everything needs the consent of the signature of the governor general. But we know that they're not
Remember,
acting.
I just said facilitators. Whatever the prime minister wants, he gets. The deputy governor general is one and the same as the prime minister's cabinet secretary. If the governor general don't sign it, the deputy can sign it or will sign it as soon as the governor general is indisposed. And that's what's been happening over and over. Greg, about all these SOEs that we've been complaining about, and we go and we find out after the fact. Some of them are properly written, some of them even
Right.
they don't publish them in the Gazette.
But
We
because
can
it's the
man, we
same
do all kind
thing.
of craziness.
It's the same
The
thing.
jackals.
These things have been written and said in company. Because even in the SOE, they were trying to stop, not trying. They said it was exhausted and the young man could not go before a judge. So from then they are practicing these things. We have been beating this horse, and it's just finally now legal's minds are jumping on board. The
They get shame.
opposition is
Now they
jumping
get
on
shame. That's
board
why.
because we
They
have
get
been doing
embarrassed.
it. We have been doing for shows talking about the bastardization of the Constitution.
How many shows now, Greg?
309.
Monday will be 310, true?
Mr. Morrison, if we were to go
Let
back over the shows, right?
Hmm.
The accuracy level would be between 95 to 97% of everything we said has come to pass.
Yeah.
Or they run go do, or deal with, after the fact. But
yeah,
we don't need no credit for it. All we want is the effort expended in terms of giving the better governance or good governance to the country.
Yes.
That's all we all about,
Yeah. Agreed. Well, gentlemen, thank you very much for taking me.
Thank you very much too for
I was rushing and I got caught up in a conversation on the phone that took like 40 minutes of my time when I was planning on getting on.
That's all right.
Mr. Morrison, will you be
You're always
available
welcome, sir.
Monday, sir?
Monday. Yes.
Okay,
Monday
Mr. Morrison.
Monday is
Monday
Gregory.
night, no, I'm going to pass the honor to you to be the chairman for that night, Mr. Morrison.
Okay.
So you can put your agenda together of what you want to speak about, and we can back you up.
Okay, no problem.
Okay. Okay, I think we have come to the final part of our show for tonight. With that said, I would like to say good night to the people at home and abroad, and thank you for tuning in to this 309th episode of Belizean Affairs. To those who text in, we welcome you. To those who watch the show after it is aired, we welcome you to be back on Monday. With that said, I would like to say good night.